Okay guys, Simon here. We've got some Minecraft design school today, and we're looking at Romopolis. It's typically Megalopolis, although it's just like a big Rome. Alright, Romopolis by James, and he's got us a few very interesting questions actually. So let me just step back, and it's good that you saved the game right here looking at the thing. See, this is awesome how he quit the game looking at what we're supposed to look at, and then so once you load in, you see it immediately. So that's cool. So James has prepared this for me. So should I read, or let's just read what he says first. Let's see. Let me just cheat a little bit. Fly out. All right, we got desert, we got a mountain. All right, cool. So James says, this is the imaginary location of Romopolis. The idea was to create a palace inspired by Mount Olympus and other Greek architecture, although Mount Olympus itself is like imaginary. Well, there is a real Mount Olympus, but anyway. So he says there's lots of pillars, bright flat stone structures. Let's just keep that in mind. And grand open areas. I wanted the player to feel danger wherever you were in the palace of Romopolis. No guardrails and quite terrifying heights. That's interesting too, and because if you're talking about mythical kind of Greek architecture, if I can call it that, I mean the idea is that if it's a palace designed for gods, then gods don't really have to worry about falling off and getting themselves killed. And so there's no guardrails because gods don't care about falling off, right? So then when you're a mortal and you walk in and there's no guardrails, then you feel like, well, I don't really belong here because it's not really designed to keep me safe. It's designed for gods. So that's interesting. So there's no guardrails. But it's also interesting in more generally, like if you want to make people feel out of place, then you kind of do that. Like you design things that are not quite right. Like if the staircase is a bit too big, that you can't actually walk up the stairs, then you feel like, well, maybe this is for giants or something, something crazy like that. Anyway, so let's go back. So his questions, he says, the main giant pillar is very tall, so I put a support beam reaching out to the mountain in the center. Actually, maybe I should come back. Let's go find the pillar, since he talked about it. I'll go read that question again when we find it. Let's go have a look around first. So there's the front door. So this massive front door, right? And so you look at it and you think, well, the door is so massive, maybe it's designed for giants or something. So that makes you feel like, well, maybe it's not. I'm not supposed to be here. That's kind of cool. So he says, want entrance to be much more grand. Want entrance to be much more grand. I don't know how much grander you want to make it. I mean, it's big. Maybe it can be more massive. Massive is not quite the same as big, right? So massive, if you think about it, there's a lot of mass. That means it's like massive is bulky as well as big. Like big can be large and thin, whereas massive is like, imagine like a massive dude. Like this is just kind of big, whereas you can be tall but thin. So maybe that's an issue here. Like that's kind of thin, so maybe you want it to be more bulky, maybe? I don't know. Just yeah, maybe more grand. It's pretty grand already, I think. Okay, so let's walk in. Lava underneath glass. So I get the sense of danger. I see what it means. Torches. Oh wait, what's going on here? Future hollow this area out, connect with above area. Okay, well you do that. I'll leave you to figure that out. Possibly market area or town center. Maybe a bit further back. It's a bit close to the main doorway or the main, the front gate. Maybe a little bit further back. It seems a bit close. The thing is, like, if your door is that big, then you presume the room would be massive. behind it, right? If you have like a massive door and then like a tiny room, then it's a bit strange to set that up and then disappoint people with something small. So, like, what now that you've started something big, you kind of have to continue with big things. So, a market area or town center, if you're thinking about like that's your market, that's a bit small compared to the size of the door, right? So now that you've started that, you might have to make it like a market, like a massive like market. Yeah, I don't know if probably. Okay, so here's the column that he was talking about. Let's see what he says in the signs. I fear this pillar will erode. What do I do? So he's talking about the water there. And then up here, is this pillar structurally sound? Okay, well, since we're here, let's talk a little bit about structure. Although given that, this is like a giant bit of rock floating in the air, I don't know if we really care about structure anymore. I mean, Minecraft just gave you floating rock. So anyway, so pillars. So the thing about pillars or columns, technically they're called columns. Maybe, should I turn? Oh hi, it's peaceful. I mean, it's creative. It doesn't really matter. So columns, there are two ways that a column can fail. So one way is like compressive failure. Like if you just kind of push a rock, like if you take a rock and you just kind of crush it, you can just kind of crush it into powder or like. It's kind of difficult because rock is actually quite strong. I'm sure you know that. Like if you try to just squeeze a rock, you can't. Usually you can't crush it. Maybe you can if you're really strong. So if you imagine maybe like a block of cheese, or maybe like a sponge cake. I guess a cake is better. Like if you imagine you get a cake, and you just kind of crush it, well, you just kind of squeeze it together, right? So rocks are stronger than cakes usually, but rocks also, I mean, if you apply enough force, you can just kind of crush it. So that's one way a column can fail, is just that, you can just crush it into powder, right? So the other way it can fail is buckling, which, so I've got a piece of paper here. I don't know if you can hear it, like, so paper. So if you're going to just take a piece of paper and you just kind of push two edges together, I mean, what happens, right? So it bends. Or folds, right? Basically that's buckling. So you push something together, it will push the middle bit outwards and the whole thing will bend. And that's the other way a column can fail. And if you go to Wikipedia and just type in buckling, it will let me just kind of tab out a little bit. And yeah, buckling, and then it gives you a lot of really difficult and complicated engineering explanations. But the other thing you can do is if you have like a plastic ruler, or if you have like maybe like toothpicks or like straws or disposable chopsticks or something, like if you take anything really, so you bend it. So if you have a long plastic ruler, actually don't break rulers, that's kind of silly. If you have like a long disposable chopsticks and you just bend it, you can snap it, right? You can kind of snap this thing in half fairly easily. But if you take half the chopsticks and you kind of bend it again, it's more difficult to break it. And then if you manage to break that, you end up with a quarter of a chopstick, and you're trying to bend that, it's even more difficult. And the reason for that is that when you bend a long column, what's going on is that the length of the column, or at least half the length of the column, is acting like a lever. Again, like you might want to type lever. You want to just going to type lever into Wikipedia to see what that means. But if you understand what levers are, so the longer the lever, the more you can multiply the force. And so when a column buckles, a long column means that there's a long lever arm to the middle where it buckles out. And so the force is multiplied more on a long column than it is on a short column. That's kind of difficult to follow. Again, if you don't really understand it, doesn't really matter. Just kind of break some chopsticks. And you basically get the idea, or toothpicks, and you get the idea that a long thing is easier to bend than a short thing. So basically, long columns buckle more easily than short columns, right? Right, and buckling is failure, is when it bends and it kind of breaks apart. So what happens is, like you said here, you put a support beam reaching out to the mountain in the center. In reality, will this provide any true support? Also, okay. So in reality, yes, it will. Yes, it will, because what happens is if you tie the middle of the column to something else, what happens is it can't bend out here anymore because it's tied to this thing. So if you can't move this, then you can't bend it out here. So what happens is when you tie it in the middle, you end up effectively with one column there and one column there. So now you have two shorter columns instead of one really long column. And as I said before, short columns are stronger than long columns. And so yes, the answer is if you tie it in the middle to other things, because now when you calculate this, it's effectively two short columns instead of one long column, because it can't bend outwards here anymore. It has to bend, like it'll be here, and it'll bend out there, although the bottom part is longer, so if it's sort of breaking out, it'll probably be, this column, it'll bend out here. So basically that's it. And, okay, so that's the answer. I hope you can follow that. It's kind of complicated, but bending and buckling and bending moments. If you kind of don't get really all of that, then just break some chopsticks or something, and just kind of try to get your head around long columns being weaker than short columns in terms of buckling. And yes, this actually helps. Although, as I said, I mean, you've tied it to a bit of floating rock, so I don't really know if that's kind of believable. I mean, the floating rock itself is not really believable in the first place. So you've tied the column to that. It looks like the column is stabilizing the rock, really, because the rock's just floating in midair. But anyway, that's a different thing, right? So the next question you want to ask is, at the base of the pillar is fixated within flowing water. Will this cause any problems in reality? Yes. Yes and no. It depends on how big the foundations are, really. If it's like this, then probably yes. Probably yes, but I mean, because eventually, over time, it will, the water will probably, as you say, erode the column, and the column will fall down. So what I would do to make it look somewhat more stable is just to do that. So just have a bigger foundation and have the water flow around the foundation. And you might have to kind of direct the water out a little bit, so maybe like have a channel, or maybe you don't even need all of this. Oops. So just kind of make it so that instead of having the water come right up to the column, have the water, well, maybe it's a bit much here, isn't it? So just have a bigger base, have a bigger foundation, so it looks more solid. I mean, it will still erode eventually, right? But then, at least you make it look like it's going to take much longer to erode the whole thing, rather than have the water come right up against the thin column. So that's not a big deal. You just make bigger foundations to make it look more solid. I think that's a fairly simple way to deal with that. You might want to just kind of make the water like flow around the. Why is that doing that? That's not correct, right? I don't even know what's going on there. And that spider doesn't know what's going on either. What are you doing? Are you an architect? Yes, I am, bro. Alright, so yeah, you might just want to make this come up above the water, just so that it just looks more solid. That's probably better. Looks better. The bases of columns should probably be pretty ginormous anyway, just to make them look more substantial. This column really is quite long, and yeah, you're right. It's probably not really big enough to hold that up. Just talking about buckling and Whether it looks strong enough to hold itself up, not really. I don't know how you feel about making that column thicker, but I think it'd be more believable if it's a bit thicker. Anyway, up to you to decide. But it just feels like it's like either that or have more columns. Like if you have another column underneath there and maybe more columns around here, then you can have like a series of smaller columns. That's effectively it's more columns. Okay, so what about my other pillars? Are they structurally sound? Where are your? Let me just look around for other pillars. Like I don't see. Oh, these ones. Are they structurally sound? Well, this is I mean, the column itself is okay. The problem is that it's kind of floating in midair again. Like, gravity pulls downwards, right? So, everything is going straight down. So if you kind of just follow the weight of this column, so, starting from here, if you follow the weight of the column straight down, you get to this point and there's nothing, which is odd. So if it were me, I would extend this down. I would extend most things down, or even if you don't extend them all the way straight down, at least have a bigger base at the bottom. Like the columns themselves look okay. It's just that it looks like it's sitting on nothing, and it looks like it needs more holding it up. Like just have a more substantial base at the column, similar to what's happening there. What other columns do you have? These ones? See, these look okay because I mean they're long and thin, which is fine. But they are, they're resting on something. Like if you kind of follow the column straight down again. Oh look, there's stuff underneath. So I mean it looks fine. Although even here maybe a bigger base would be okay as well. Just the foot of it. I mean, imagine if you or just look at your own foot. It's not just a stump, right? You've got your leg comes down and then it spreads out onto a foot. So the way that spreads out, maybe you want to do more for your columns as well. Just have it kind of spread out with a bigger base. So that looks okay. There's creepers all over your building. I'm sorry. And I think that's all your columns, right? Anyway, that's all I can find for now. What are your other questions? I planned ahead with my staircases, yet they still turned out awkward looking. And I think they would break in real life. Well, again, they're kind of resting on nothing. How would you have done my staircases differently to be more structurally sound and aesthetic? Many the ones elevated in between the bedroom and smithing area high up in the mountain. Okay, so, well, that's the bed, so I guess that's the bedroom. And what do these say? I had a lot of trouble with these staircases, okay. Do these pillars provide any real support? The pillars, yes. The base, I'm a bit suspicious about. Going into another room, alright, so the smithing area is, oh, there it is. Planned those out beforehand, still went wrong. Yeah, I think it's more your structures. It's more your... It's not the stuff you build, it's what's going on underneath the stuff you built, if that makes sense. So here, yeah, they look like they're floating in the air. How to make them work? I would put some structure underneath, like if you don't mind, I'm just gonna completely rebuild some of this just for demonstration purposes. So imagine if you kind of build an arch under here. Because look, arches are strong. I don't know if you understand how arches, or maybe if you don't, then go to Wikipedia and look up arch and learn about physics and structure. But basically, like what I would, if you want to make it look like it's something believable, maybe not up there, but like build an arch like down here maybe. This is not a very good arch. In fact, it's a pretty bad arch. That is a pretty bad arch. Let me just push this back a little bit. And push this back a little bit. And then do that and that. I mean, you can make it look better. I'm just kind of quickly doing this, right? So you put an arch under here. Just, that's pretty bad. My bad. So imagine there's a beautiful arch, kind of bridging across there, and then the staircase is on top. So then it looks like it's resting on an arch, and the arch is resting against the two rocks, and so then it's holding it up, right? And it's here. Unfortunately, there's something else here. But again, you would want an arch kind of across there, maybe, and then have the staircase resting on top of the arch. What's It'll be good if I can get something for you to look at. If I kind of type something into... Let me just tab out a little bit. Go to my Google image search and type in arch bridges and image. Unfortunately, some of these are stone. Stone arch bridges. Those are cool. Yeah, so like if you're gonna go into Google image search and look up stone arch bridges. Let me try elevated staircase. Elevated staircase. Not quite as good. Not quite as useful. Yeah, no, not quite as useful. Arch staircase? Not. Let me just go staircase structure. Like you've got the. Oh, this is really complicated. Staircase structure. Maybe this might actually be useful if you're interested in structure, although you might not really understand what you're looking at. Maybe like staircase structure. Yeah, I mean like the shape of it, like the top of it, you've got quite well. Like, you know, this stuff. The fact that you can walk up the staircase just fine. Like you've got this part done really good. It's just this. Like your questions seem to suggest that you want to make things look believable in gravity. Like you want to make it look as though if you put this in the real world, it won't fall down, right? And that is the structure underneath, right? So yeah, like more arches, more massive, like more stuff, more stones holding it up, more solidity, massive. Let me just type in massive architecture into Google image search and see what I find. Massive architecture. Curious. Some of this is gravity defying. Not that useful. I'll just be honest, not that useful. Not that useful. But yeah, just more stuff. More stuff. Don't be afraid of mass. Don't be afraid of, like, you know, you have these really kind of thin walkways, but in fact, if it's stone, or if it's some kind of stone, it will have to be an arch. It will have to be an arch in order for this thing not to just kind of fall down. That, if it's steel, you can do that. Even if it's wood, that's too thin for that to hold itself up. I'm just thinking about what happens. I guess you get a feel for these things if you kind of play around with these materials enough. I don't know if you can get just like planks of wood and just try to break them in the middle. You don't really have to break them. Like if you get a long plank of wood and just, you know, just sit in the middle, or like if you have a tree branch or something, just kind of sit and kind of feel how it moves. Like it's really odd. Like when you're walking over a bridge and the bridge moves underneath you, it's really disconcerting. Like it really makes you feel like the thing's going to break, even though a lot of times it doesn't break. Sometimes it does. But, you know, you don't want the bridge to feel like it's going to fall apart underneath your feet, right? That's kind of really scary. So that's what's going to happen, even if it's, you know, even if it doesn't actually fall apart. If it's too thin, it'll feel like it's moving a lot. And, it feels like a trampoline when it's supposed to be a bridge. That's not cool. So, you know, with really thin things, that's what it's going to look like. Or it's going to feel like if you walk over it in real life. Will be another section of the palace. All right. So Yeah, just more massive. More massive. More. Yeah, actually, I think that's the theme here. Because same with the door, like you say, want it to be much more grand. I think it is about the mass, just kind of mass. Like if you look at Egyptian architecture, there's just a lot of stone, just a lot of kind of big, bulky blocks of stone. All right. You also ask, how would you have done my staircases differently to be more structurally sound and aesthetic? Many of the ones elevated in between the bedroom and smithing area, right? Okay, so structurally sound, I think just more massive. As for aesthetic, they look kind of good already. Maybe try working in a few more materials. The thing is, once you have like these giant arches, then you're gonna have a lot of space here. You might want to try different colors, different materials. Like instead of having the same color, maybe you want to put a border around things, like use different types of stone. There's colored clay. You can always use more colors if you're into it. I know you say you're basing this on like Greek architecture, and a lot of the remains of Greek architecture is white. But what people don't often realize is that back when the Greeks were using the buildings, they would paint them. Like we're left with these white buildings because all the paint is washed off, right? You know, the stone lasts several thousand years, the paint only lasts several years at best. So we don't see the paint anymore. But the fact is, when the Greeks were around and they were using these buildings, they painted them bright colors. And people don't really know that, so we think, wow, all these white temples, right? But they're actually not just white, they actually painted bright colors. Not sure if you're into it. Maybe you're not into white. I guess there's sandstone too, so there's the quartz and the sandstone. So if you're not really into bright colors, although you have used the greens and the blues, you know, of these exotic materials, maybe sandstone, got the gold there. What is that gold? Hold on, let me just come around and have a look. I would also like to hear your criticism and general opinion of some of my choices and future prospects for the map. More information. What are you planning on making this a giant helmet? Oh, I see. Oh, I see it. I see it. I see it. Giant face sculpture. Oh, what's this? Let me just have a good look around. General aesthetic concepts and thoughts and other terrace, maybe a guard post. I mean, when you're making architecture like this, it doesn't really necessarily need to have a purpose. You can just have things look awesome. Terrace, maybe diving area. Alright, I see it. I wonder if you are respecting the mountain a little too much. Like here, like you've put a torch in the mountain. This is actually quite cool, I like that. But the way you've done it is that your structure is flush with the mountain, like, you know, it's on the same plane, right? If that makes sense. So then it seems like, so when you do that, then your structure is on the same level as the mountain, like, you know, it's in the same space as the mountain. So then it feels like you're respecting the mountain. Whereas if you want to make your architecture stand out and stick out, you might, you know, make this come out a bit, so that instead of having your thing flush with the mountain, you have your building stick out from, well, like this. See how that's kind of sticking out from the cliff? Then that way, your architecture is, you know, framing the mountain. And then your architecture is actually more important than if it's just flush. So that's what I mean when I say maybe you're respecting the mountain too much. See, then there's more shape, and there's kind of more interesting than just having it flat, right? So then, but you're also respecting the mountain less. You're kind of saying, okay, this is my building. I'm going to put it in front of your mountain. You know, so my structure is more important than your mountain. So that's what you're kind of doing if you do that. And that maybe will highlight your architecture a bit more. See how that... Okay, I mean, I didn't try very hard to make that look good. But like here, it's kind of like, oh, well, I'm just the same as the mountain here. Whereas if you do this, then it's like, no, I'm going to stick out. I'm going to stick out from the mountain. I'm not going to be the same as the mountain. I'm going to, be more than the mountain. Kind of come out from it a little bit. So maybe that, just kind of more texture, just so that. I mean, if you want your architecture to look like it's kind of big and grand, you kind of have to make it stand out more, right? Like here, like the way the staircase wraps around the stone, like you're really respecting the stone. Whereas if you don't want to respect the stone, just kind of cut through it, or just kind of build over it, or just kind of dig through it, dig a hole through it, or something. You see what I mean? Like the idea of respect. I mean, it's good to be respectful. You don't want to be, a jerk or anything. But if you want your architecture to look like it's something impressive, then you kind of have to do it. Like you kind of have to disrespect the mountain a bit. Like it's just not like, not to be a bad person about it, but you can't be too respectful if you want to be awesome. You know what I mean? Anyway, general opinions of my choices and future prospects. Not too sure about the future prospects. I mean, that's really up to you to build stuff. Actually, let me just have a look at what this is. This is a thing. I don't know what this is. Crystal powers the palace through the emeralds. Yes, the power of emeralds. And wait a minute, don't you need where are my things? Where are my things? Don't you need like one of these? Speed. Can I? Wait a minute, I can't choose? I can't. Wait a minute. How do I do this? Iron ingot? Why can't I do this? I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing, guys. I thought you just stick that in there. It clicked at me, but it won't. Oh, it's not a pyramid. Oh, you don't have a pyramid, that's why. Hold on. Wait a minute. let me break your thing. That's a pyramid, right? Let me just distract myself with things that aren't really important. That's not a pyramid either. I'm just gonna break your thing a bit more. Crap, I just lost it. Where's the where is I don't actually know. Oh, here it is. Okay, is this a pyramid? This is not. It's not a pyramid, is it? Okay, this is my last attempt. If this doesn't work, then don't worry about it. I'm just gonna do this. Okay, that's wait, no, that's not a pyramid. Oh, you need more stuff for this to be a pyramid. Let me just Am I doing this wrong? Am I literally doing this? Oh, there you go. There you go. There you go. Beacon. Okay, I just completely messed that up. Never mind. Ignore what I just did. General criticism. I would use more colors. I know you've. I mean, that's mostly white. I know you've actually used a bit of stuff here. Lapis? Do you like lapis? You've got red, right? And you got obsidian, red carpet. You got some light blue. Maybe like pick a color scheme, or maybe like for each area, you might want to like color code your areas, and kind of think about what colors mean what. Like like pick a green. You have the emeralds there. Maybe like pick a blue, like a lapis or a gold or something, and just be careful about using too many colors. Obviously, you don't want it to look like a circus, but also like if you have too few colors, it's a bit kind of boring as well. So maybe like color code your areas and just be careful about just kind of put a theme, a color theme from one place to the other. Actually, use sandstone here. Sandstone and quartz and a little bit of color maybe. Yeah, you've done that though already a little bit. And there's also the natural colors like the water, right? That's blue. I don't know what the overall plan is. I mean, looking at this, I see you've done a few things. I don't really see the big picture, and I don't know if you have a big picture. I know you've got a few plans about things here and there. Like, I don't know if you've kind of just stepped back at any point in time and just decided where things are going to go. Maybe do you do this? Like, do you just kind of step back, fly around, and just kind of think about where things go and what to do? I mean, if you want kind of platforms among the mountains, do you think maybe you need more platforms? I don't know. Just wondering, like, there's this giant space here. Not too sure what you're thinking or what you have in mind. What does that say? I have no idea what I'm doing right here. I mean, I don't know if you've actually done any research into classical architecture. I mean, you talk about kind of Greek and this kind of classical things, but there are like very specific parts to classical architecture. Let me just type in classical architecture into Google image search. Like, there are some very specific shapes and then ways, like, the columns hold up the beams and then the beams hold up the ceiling. I mean, even though it's all stone, what classical architecture is it's like a representation of older wooden architecture. Like, the columns would be like actual tree trunks holding up logs at the beams. So the carvings on the stone and the shape of the stone actually look like the wooden buildings, to the columns and the beams and the ceilings and the roofs and all that. So there's actually there's a lot to learn if you're interested, although I don't want to go into too much detail here. So maybe if you just type in classical architecture into Wikipedia even, and you'll learn a lot of kind of things, and maybe that would be useful just to know more about all this stuff. Roman Greek architecture, ancient Greek architecture. You can type that into Wikipedia. A lot of stuff for you to read if you're into reading, and you'll learn a lot if you just kind of look through this article. Alright, that's pretty cool. You might want to do that. Classical or ancient Greek architecture. Yeah, that's the Wikipedia page. Because, like, you say you have no idea what's going on there. Neither do I, to be honest. Because usually it'll be a column holding up the floor, and then maybe another column on top of that. So this is odd. I mean, the floor should like, the column should end at the floor, and then the floor will be here, and then there might be another column holding up the ceiling, for example. I mean, you can have like a balcony out here, another terrace, or maybe it's just a giant thing. I mean, what does it look like? Like, when you kind of just walk through here. That's kind of cool, though. Like, you kind of walk down the stairs and you can look out, and there's the other thing. That's kind of cool. Kind of look both ways. Yeah, it's not bad. There's potential. You can do stuff with that. Okay, so I think I've talked enough. I think I'm rambling. If you have more questions, feel free to ask them, or if anyone else has ideas or suggestions, feel free to leave those in the comments. I think that the general comment is just more massive. Don't be afraid to make things bulky and massive and just big, because you want it to be awesome anyways, and therefore you have to make it just massive. Not just tall, but bulky as well. Okay, I'm gonna end it there, and I'll see you guys when I see you.